Look at this. I installed a windscreen from my Ninja 250. I actually had this on my EX 250. And I really like those bikes. But I have two windscreens. One a friend gave me, but this is a touring windscreen. It's broken. There's a couple of downsides to this. It's if you turn like this, you hit it. So very limited range. That's so much better having this windscreen. Hopefully it doesn't break on the ride, but I guess I could shave off a little bit here. Yeah, I see some fancy cars. Yeah, I think most of these guys are gone. We'll do a little loop around this center and see if any straddlers are still here. Yeah, there's still some old cars here. Oh, quite a few actually. It's pretty packed. This guy's selling art. Oh, a pig parker. I gotta go check this pig parker out. That's the more interesting thing here. I like seeing these pig parkers. Watch. It's either like he's screaming for attention or he's just a douchebag. This is one good pig parker. It's so funny. Look at this pig parker. That is one crazy pig parker. Look at this. That is like an interesting pig parker. And then there's that big Chevy that's even bigger. He managed to park within the lines. That is interesting. Look at this. That is a great pig parker. I mean, look at that. There's plenty of space, but yeah, that's kind of an amazing amount of pig parking. Yeah. I mean, you have to feel so entitled to do that. I don't get it. What, is he upset that Kyle Rittenhouse got off or something? Look at this. This is the first time I've had to use the parking brake while parking, because I'm going down. But, you know, I'm really finding this bike very interesting to ride. And not even just because of the DCT. The DCT gives it a little bit more character, almost like a scooter-like type of ride. But it handles pretty well with these tires. I don't even know what they are. But the windscreen, I know, looks ridiculous, but it's very effective. So that's the reason I usually get large windscreens, to deflect from the rides in the winter. I'm probably going to be removing this. I don't see too much point to using it, at least for me. I mean, I guess I can tune in some music, but I can't really listen to it because I also put earphones on. But that's the nice thing about it. I really like how unique this bike is. It's a very unique bike, NC700x, and mainly because of that engine. I know that the 750X, which came after this, there was a lot of complaints from riders that got this, and they were complaining that it revs too low. It revs too low, and it does. It's a very low revving engine, but I think that's the idea behind this. It's low revving and high fuel efficiency, and I like that. You know, one of the big complaints I have with the Super Tenere is that it is just simply a gas guzzler, but it's also one of these things that the engine is so fun to ride that you constantly are giving it gas, so fuel efficiency goes down the drain. But on this, you know, I haven't really filled up, so, but it is an amazingly fuel efficient bike. I mean, I probably could get 70 miles to the gallon on this. And you know, one of the reasons I got into Ninja 250s was because those bikes got 70 miles to the gallon out of a 250. Now this gets 70 miles to the gallon out of a 700. I believe it's like a 680 or something. And it's a twin cylinder like the Ninja 250, but it's got some really big benefits that I've talked to you guys about. So first of all, if you're a home mechanic, this engine is what you want, and many people put hundreds of thousand miles on this engine. This bike is way more popular in Europe and South America than it is in the United States. That engine is very well designed for longevity because of the low revving nature of this bike. So I think this thing will be a better like mileage bike. I think you're not going to have any issues with this. And I have seen so many riders with like 200,000 kilometers and 250. That's like 150,000 miles, 160,000 miles. It's crazy. This one, of course, has got the ABS and the DCT, which gives it a little bit more bulk. And you do feel it on that right side. It's like when you put your feet down, you get that. It comes up with a bike bell, which is really silly. It does have a bash plate, so, you know, this bike is styled as a ADV bike, but not really an ADV bike. Now, for me, it would have been better if these guys put a 19 front wheel on it. I have seen an aftermarket 19-inch front wheel that somebody put on an NC700, and I believe the guy was in North Carolina. And, you know, I did ask him about it. I forgot how he got the tire or the wheel, but it's possible to put a 19 front wheel on it. But, you know, 17s are a good choice for commuting and riding in general. You don't really need a 19 front wheel if you're not riding a little bit off-road. I do like the larger wheel. The Super Tenere, of course, has got a 19 front wheel. The V-Strom has got a 19-inch. It really helps it. I do like it. You know, that's the thing about this bike. It's just and single disc up front, so no additional weight from the rotors and the calipers. I think it's a very well designed bike. There are some big negative things. First, so to open up the fuel thing, you put it here. I kind of wish there was a key here, so in case something happened, you wouldn't need to like run through the wires and all of that. The fuel tank is here, which is a downside for touring. And you might ask, why is that? Well, most likely if you're touring, you're using this as luggage. You know, I put my sleeping bag and I put my tent on the rear seat because it's like longer this way. It makes a whole lot more sense, but you can't do that on this bike because you have the gas tank there. Now, I wish that Honda put it offside, kind of like what they did with BMWs. That makes a whole lot more sense. But that's a small little thing. I do like the gas tank being there. It makes a whole lot more sense than in the front and having a really large tank full of gas and just weighs the bike down. Here's another really great benefit of this bike is that the weight of it is very low. So the engine is forward. It almost feels like the GS in a way, even though it's so big. It's the weight is further down than a lot of bikes, so it makes riding even at low speeds very good. It's a very good handling bike. At low speeds, this is great. Like, you know, especially with the DCT, you don't have any issue like moving it around. So comfort, I think it's pretty comfortable, but I've never really done any long rides on it. And it's a very simple bike. As far as like controls, you don't have anything that screams modes or anything. It's very simple. Just put it in drive and you go. For a new rider, I definitely recommend this. So, you know, this is one of those bikes that people go, it's for a new rider and advanced rider. I do believe that. Because this bike, if you're an advanced rider, they're just stacking on tons of miles. This is for you. And if you're a new rider, you don't have the clutch control just yet. You don't want like crazy power. This is for you because it doesn't have crazy power, but it does move fast when you want it. And you have that ability of shifting by yourself using the paddles here. I honestly think that's a little bit useless. I don't really find myself using it too much. I do like putting it on D mode and just driving it or, you know, riding it. It's funny, why is it called D? I guess it's drive mode, but it really should be ride mode. And yeah, it's a fantastic bike, and the trunk space, look at that. I mean, it is such a huge amount of space. You have the battery right here. This usually, I think, comes with tools, but the previous owner, I guess, lost it. And you have a parking brake here. It's very easy to ride. It's just like it does feel a little bit like of a budget bike when it comes to suspension, and it feels like, oh yeah, kind of needs something else. But this bike, I think in the US, if you're watching this and you are in Europe, this bike is much more expensive in Europe and South America than it is in the United States. In the United States, people don't really like this bike. They kind of see it as a slow, boring bike. They don't really see it for what it is, like a brilliant, functional bike that most people are more inclined to get in European cities. Now, out here in the outskirts of Washington, D.C., you don't really have the need for a commuter bike like this, but commuters, like the Honda Ascot and all of that, it falls in a different basket. It used to be you had standard bikes. Now the standard bikes have become kind of like this, more ADV style bikes, because people see the benefit of having the upright seating position and the mirrors up top and like the slimness. That is another thing that's good about this bike, is that it's very slim. When you get on the Super Tenere or on a BMW GS, it is so much bigger. It is so much wider. It kind of doesn't feel like you can split lanes because of the very large nature of those bikes. So for this to have a very small profile in European cities where you really need the ability to get in between cars is a little bit more valued than here in the United States, where the roads tend to be much larger. The DC metro area is a little bit different in that respect because it is a very tight city, but most American cities, they tend to be a lot larger. And if you're kind of considering a scooter, let's say the SH150 that I have, you need a motorcycle license for that. So you might think, oh, just get something like this and you have a motorcycle and the ability of touring. But I do find that scooters are completely great for commuting, even better, I think, than a motorcycle. But that's just me. Some people, they cannot get past the scooter image, but I find them to be, if you don't have an ego attached to your bike, then scooter life is so much better because it flies under the radar of most people. But this bike, with its silver tone, and I wanted a red bike. I've always liked the Honda Red, but both NC700s that I've had have been silver. This, of course, is the 2012 NC700x DCT ABS, so that's the only color I believe that came for that year, and I think the following year became red, and then they have some other colors. Honda tends to do that. This one does have the stock exhaust. It is not a very good sounding exhaust because it is a twin cylinder. That's not particularly great for sound. A lot of times you can say that you ride with your ears because of the tone of the motorcycle, and it is particularly true with this. This is not a bike that's passionate for riding. What you want to do, if you want to get this bike, you're a different type of cat. It's almost like a KLR 650 thing. It's for people who are entirely practical. They look at things in a very utilitarian way, and this, you couldn't get a better commuting motorcycle than this. And I think this makes a good touring motorcycle if you get the side cases because of the gas tank. When I sold my last NC700X, I kind of regretted it. At the time, I sold it cheap, but I did regret it. That was in the beginning of COVID, and I regret selling it, so I started looking for another one. And I kind of feel that this bike might be a collector's item in the United States after a while. In Europe, these are abundant, they're everywhere, but here in the United States, it's kind of a cool bike. Alright, I'm going to enter I-95 briefly because I want to test how this bike does on the highway. Now, previously, my tests were with that wimpy windscreen. This is a much better windscreen. It doesn't look that bad from the pilot point of view, but I always think that bikes need better windscreens. If you're going to ride a motorcycle year-round, or you're going to do touring, the best thing you could possibly do is like the seat and the windscreen. Yeah, very surprising. I think this bike is not as good as a lot of the big bikes because it is a little bit on the lighter weight of things, but it seems to be okay on the highway. It just, I need to install some nice things to make it much more comfortable, like heated grips. Then it would be a proper commuter bike for every day. Oh, look at this. Good ride. I got a full tank of gas, and I even have my tunes. Oh, I guess I have to start the engine. No, it's like you push that. And it's connected. Now, let go of the brake.
Jimmy John Subs was there.
It's a little difficult to let go of the brake.
Jimmy John's a buddy of mine.
You see that?
Great guy.
Great guy.
There we go.
Here's where it gets nuts. Kid Rock has built a White House. Rock star, hillbilly type shit. It's when you give a hillbilly, when you give a real redneck, and you give them fucking insane amounts of money.
It doesn't come up. But it's very quick. Especially in sport mode, this thing does move very fast. The people that would get an NC700 would also be the same people that would get like a V-Shrob 650. And we all know that motorcycle riders, they go from one bike to the other and it's completely different, and it's kind of like tasting food. So I compare them so people understand, because, you know, I compare this to a CB500 and people's just heads exploded, and it's like, is that really that different? Well, the CB500 and this are so similar but yet so different at the same time, but the people that would get them are exactly almost the same. I think the CB500 has got a lot more popularity because the engine is a lot sprightlier, but I don't know, for me I would pick this over the CB500. Of course, now the CB500's got a 19-inch front wheel, and exactly, it's what this bike requires to be competitive. But unfortunately, this has been relegated to the commuting bin, and I kind of like that. I like that this bike is perfect for commuting, and I would take this cross-country in a heartbeat. If I didn't have the Super 10 Ray, you know, you can outfit it pretty well with all sorts of stuff. The CB500 though, it's one of these bikes that if you line it up next to this, it looks so similar, but the engine, the way it behaves is just absolutely different. And of course, you know, I did have a CB500 for a short time, and then I rode a CB500 cross country, and you know, that bike was fine. There was really nothing wrong with the CB500 for cross-country trips, but when you compare it to the V-Strom, you go like, whoa, okay, the CB500 is a little bit livelier than this bike for riding, but not as lively as the V-Strom 650. You know, the V-Strom 650 is still one of these bikes that just doesn't get enough praise, and it's still one of my favorite, most reliable bikes. And you can get them so cheap. They have that amazing little V-twin, and it's not the same thing as the large V-twin from the V-Strom 1000. I think that bike, it's like, if you get that, it's just like a heavy bike. Well, who cares about the 1000? Now, I did ride the V-Strom 1000, and I liked it. The instrument panel is confusing, very badly designed, but I wasn't really that impressed. Like, I almost forgot entirely what it was. There's the one to get is the 650. It's not the 1000. The 1000 is there's a reason it's not a very popular bike. It never really was. But then again, there are people that like those bikes. I'm not one of them. I never liked the 1000. It just feels overly heavy, and when you compare it to the V-Strom 650, it's just, nobody really should get the 1000. But this one, it's a heavy bike, but because of the weight is like lower to the ground, it feels better. You know, it's hard to tell people that a heavy bike that's got the weight down low is a lot better. And this one is. It's got like this well-behaved, low-weight styling that's very cool to have. Yeah, with the big windscreen, it really changes the bike. The ride for today, make sure you hit that subscribe. Remember, every time you hit subscribe, a squid gets his horn.
It's a good thing you're not stacked, Harry, or I'd be banging you right now. I'd show you what a real man can do. Split you like an old piece of firewood.
Kind of stuck here. The cops won't bother me.